Okay. Well, Father Mike.
Do I look at you or?
I suppose he should look at me, shouldn't he? When he's
yeah, just try to ignore the camera.
Yeah, make it like a conversation. Yeah. Father Mike.
Yes.
Thanks for having us here today.
My pleasure.
We're here to talk about your life. You've lived a decorated life in the American South. I'm fascinated by you and your journey. You began not here. Where are you from originally?
County Limerick,
okay.
Ireland.
So we have something in common there, which is nice. So we hit it off pretty early, I think. Tell me about what was going on in Limerick as you remember, and what are your memories of that, and school and all that kind of stuff. There's a picture there we might be able to have a look at.
Well, I have to tell you my age, I guess, to begin with. I'm 78 years of age, and I've been here for 54 years. And prior to that, of course, I spent 6 years in a seminary, in a major seminary, and so I'm going back over 60 years, to my childhood memories of Limerick. And that was right after the Second World War in Ireland. But times were difficult. Ireland was a struggling country, and as were most of the European countries after the Second World War. And America had a great reputation, and certainly among my family, America was held in the highest esteem, because I had both on my father's side and mother's side, I had uncles, aunts, and in fact, I always say, like, my grandfather, my father's father, was one of 10 children, and all 10 children ended up in this country to seek out their fame and their fortune. And my grandfather was the only one of the 10 who went back home to Ireland to raise his family.
Okay.
And
so he was the exception.
He was, yes, in my family, yes.
The rest stayed.
No, the rest stayed, yeah.
So is that when they talk about coffin ships, is that what they were talking about, or not quite?
Well, this would be a little later than the coffin ships. This would have been the early part of the 1900s, the 20th century. The coffin ships would have been probably more the 1800s after the famine years.
Yeah, a bit before that. So.
Yeah.
And coming over here, for you, was that a bit of a coffin? I've heard that basically, just to contextualise for an American, the coffin ships were called coffin ships because you either died on the ship or you never came back, so you effectively died. Your life in Ireland was over once you got that boat to America in the 1800s.
That's true.
As I understand it. So, for you, was that move a similar moment? It was the end of your time in Ireland, or wasn't that serious?
No.
You didn't see it like that?
I didn't see it like that. I was invited to come here to work as a priest, and I made that choice to come here, and I had a choice of going to many different places here in this country, from California to Florida to New England and places beyond. And but the Deep South was the place that was advertised, and the representatives from this area, because this was not Catholic country.
No.
The bishops here in the Deep South were very much in need of manpower for their various dioceses, and we had the advantage of speaking halfway normal English. So
as opposed to what?
As opposed to Polish, French, Spanish or something, we spoke English, and we were kind of didn't have to worry about going to language schools or anything, and we were off and running as soon as we were ordained priests. And anyway, I accepted the invitation to come to Mississippi, and it was presented as a very nice place at the time, and beautiful climate, nice people. Now there was a huge, big social issue, like the issue of the day was civil rights, of course, but that was the big challenge that was placed before us, young, impressionable Irish guys, and I embraced that. I thought that was good. But we were always told like that you'll have an opportunity to, to go back, see your folks quite often.
Yes.
And not every week or anything like that, but every once in a while, and that was attractive.
Were you an idealistic young man coming out of Thurles at that age, or was it just a bit of fun? Like, did you have a big vision? I'm gonna fix the racial problem, or was it more casual?
I would say both.
Yeah.
I was young.
Yeah.
I was in my early 20s. My life was before me. And yet the challenge was there. The challenge was presented as, a real opportunity to get involved in one of the great movements of the day, and so that was attractive too. So I would say both.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And can we just have a quick look? There's a picture here. I just want to go reasonably chronologically. Tell us about Munchin's College in Limerick, and then we'll fully dive into the States.
Okay.
Because I think most of your life is in America, so that's the focus. But I don't want to forget Munchkins,
Okay.
and all that. So,
all right.
Do you have any recollection of that?
Yes, I do very well. When I was 15, I was sent to this boarding school. It was a diocesan minor seminary, and I was one of, there were about 70 of us, I think, in the boarding school. But it was a big day school as well, and that became my new family very early on.
Were you in the seminary at 15, or just in school?
It was a high school seminary.
So were all the people there going to be priests?
No.
Okay, not all.
No,
okay.
It was a high school.
Okay, fine.
But they called it a minor seminary.
Okay.
Every diocese in Ireland had minor seminaries at the time. The environment was such that you kind of the idea of promoting vocations to the priesthood was held before you all the time,
and that's completely gone now. Like, people don't understand in America how different that is in Ireland now and then. Like, what you're talking about is completely unheard of now.
I guess so.
In schools. No, that's a fact.
I guess so.
We didn't have any of that. And I went to a Catholic school, and most of my friends did. And the thought of that would be laughed at, actually. Maybe that's too harsh, but you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do.
You know what I mean? So talk to me about Ireland at that time, generally, and the leaders. Was De Valera around?
De Valera was the Prime Minister, and life was very difficult. The big recollection I have when I was a teenager, 15, 16, 17, 18, the mentality of every one of my buddies in school was, as soon as we graduate from high school, get out of the country. There's nothing here. There's no future, no jobs here. And they just literally went in waves to London, Liverpool, Birmingham. This is where the construction jobs were. You could make money. If you had connections, you could go all the way to Australia, but that was far away.
And did they come back, these guys?
Some did, and a lot of them never did.
Wow.
They might have come back maybe 30, 40 years later, after they married, raised their families, and
Did you ever go to Dublin? Obviously you would have been at least once, but
not too
regularly
often.
Or what?
No, not too often, very seldom.
Was there a bit of a, like, people joke about in the All Ireland, everyone wants Dublin to lose, There's 31 counties against the one in the football. In supporting, did you have that begrudgery, or were people out to get the capital in that sense? Or
no, Dublin was, the big city.
Yeah.
Half the population of the country lived in Dublin. That's where the big, All Ireland all games were played, football, hurling, and all that.
Yeah.
And it was a treat to go there, but to visit Dublin, no, that was not.
Not a big thing.
Not a big thing.
Fair enough. And how were your family with your decision to join the priesthood? And so that's one decision, and then the second decision must have been a separate decision to come to here, to the Gulf Coast, to Mississippi, a million miles away.
Yeah, the decision to embrace the priesthood, consider going into the seminary to be a priest, that was fully supported by my family. Now again, the dynamics of the population, the country was 97% Catholic. And
observant Catholics as well.
Pardon?
Observant Catholics as well, where now...
I would call them legalistic Catholics.
Okay.
The Catholic Church was very much held in high esteem.
Yeah.
And just about every single family had a member in the clergy. In fact, there used to be a joke like that, especially among some English people, and that Ireland was a priest-ridden country. I'm sure you've heard that.
I haven't heard that, actually.
No, really, it was. You had priests all over the place. So becoming a priest was very normal to them.
Yeah. It's like the military here or something.
Yeah, and plus it was kind of a good job, if you like. There were no jobs in Ireland, and plus you had an opportunity for higher education if you went into the major seminary, and so I decided to go into the seminary, but not to study for the Irish, for the home mission.
Okay.
That was a big thing. I decided I'm not going to stay in Ireland.
Wow.
Again, my buddies here in high school, they were all leaving the country, and the idea of leaving was perfectly normal to me. Maybe I just...
So those decisions were intertwined completely then? Between the priesthood and the leaving, they were joined?
Pretty well, yes.
Much.
Yes.
So you came here, well, not here exactly to this very place, but tell me, first impression, where did you land, as it were?
Okay.
And what was that like? And how did you get here? Was it a plane or a
I
boat?
flew from Shannon. There were at least 5 or 6 of us ordained roughly about the same time. 2 of us were coming to Mississippi. There were a couple of more guys going elsewhere, and we all got in the plane in Shannon, flew to New York. We parted company there. I flew on to Chicago, where I had an aunt living at the time. Okay. She had invited me to come and spend a few days before coming down to Mississippi, and I did, and that was my first impression of America, and it was on the 25th of August 1965.
Okay.
The temperature was about 95 degrees. It was beastly hot, but I didn't mind it too much. But it was very hot, I do remember that.
Were you wearing like a black shirt?
Yes, I was. Black suit, the official garb, and Irish material and all that. And I remember my folks in Chicago saying, "Oh, wait till you go to Mississippi, you'll really know what heat is."
Yeah.
And it scared me a little bit, really? But I didn't mind. I was young, and I was well able to endure it. And
so from Chicago?
From Chicago then, I said goodbye to them. They put me on a plane. I flew from there to St. Louis on my own, St. Louis to Memphis, Memphis to Columbus, Mississippi.
Wow.
And there was a guy I knew in Columbus. He had been actually the vocation director at that particular time, and I was going to spend a day or 2 with him before coming down to Jackson.
Okay.
And the process at the time was, as soon as you get into the diocese, you go before the bishop's office and you get sworn in, and you have to take an oath of office and all that. And
wow.
I took all that in Latin. And
an oath of office?
Right.
Is that still done?
I think they've modified it, and it's done in a very different format, but it's still...
So you were on your own from Chicago?
From Chicago, yes.
You come down and you did all that, let's say, paperwork in Jackson?
In Jackson. Well,
the capital?
By the time I got to Jackson, I met up with my buddy who flew out also with me, but he went his way in Chicago, and we met in Jackson again. And but that was fun. We laughed, and we kind of made cynical comments about the the personnel that were handling all those
Really?
situations, and it was good. It was.
The way people talk to me about, I remember my brother advising me as to how I should act in the visa interview, and like it's like you're a horse, like in a horse race. You don't look funny. You don't mess around. You don't.
Yeah.
You wear a shirt. I'm normally pretty scruffy. He said, wear a shirt.
Yeah.
Like, don't piss these guys off. Basically, the immigration people or anyone related to the authorities.
Yeah.
In the United States, like, you don't mess with these guys.
Yeah.
Did you have that feeling at all, or was it far more laid back? Obviously, immigration is a completely different issue now from back then.
Well, no, that was being sworn in as
the priest.
As a priest.
In general, the whole process,
No, almost immediately then, of course, I applied for American citizenship.
Okay.
Within a week after arriving here.
Wow.
I mean, I was so happy to be free and out of Ireland and in a new land, and it was exciting here. So I went and applied for American citizenship, and the process was very simple then. I went to the local post office, I filled out some papers, and got my green card almost immediately, and then 5 years later I was sworn in as a citizen. Now I had a little booklet that I had to study, and like who's the president, how many senators are in the state. And
so who was the president at that time?
Johnson.
LBJ.
LBJ.
And so you did your homework, so to speak.
A little bit, yeah. You know, I knew from listening to other guys that it's kind of formal, but nobody fails.
Okay.
Yeah.
I get you.
Certificate of naturalization.
Which is that separate from citizenship, or that is citizenship?
That's it.
That's citizenship right there. Wow.
And that's just a copy. The original one is hanging somewhere in the house here.
That's amazing. Complexion fair, colour of eyes brown, colour of hair brown. 5 feet 8 inches. That's gas, isn't it? That'd be cool to see, wouldn't it?
Yeah, we could.
Do you want to start with
that? With stuff like that, we can get all that after, like close-ups of it.
Perfect.
Yeah, because then it'll be kind of hard to like keep going back and forth like that.
Okay.
That would be a prized possession for a lot of people.
Oh, you mean
today?
To have that.
But I'm rolling, so
we're good to go.
Yeah, I'm ready to go whenever you are.
Alrighty. Father Mike, will you tell me about Father Corcoran? You mentioned him at Mass today.
Oh, okay.
And then there's also someone who's named after him.
Okay.
That's relevant, I think.
All right, Frank Corcoran. He was from Nina. He was in his mid-80s, I guess, when he died, just last week, and he ministered in this area for many years, so he's well known here. And I just thought it would be a nice idea to offer a prayer for the happy repose of his soul. And then this little guy, he was born about 50 years ago. He had Down syndrome, and he was called after Father Corcoran. They called him Corky.
Yes.
And he was just a child that was very much loved by his family.
Yes.
And
but going back to Father Corcoran, I just want to kind of get a sense of the role of Irish priests here. Like, it was pretty major.
Very much so.
He had a big role, didn't he?
Very much so. Now, I came here in 1965, and at the time, I came to the Catholic Diocese of Mississippi, which embraced the whole state of Mississippi. And at one time, in those early years, we had 110 native Irish priests like myself, which was a huge lot of priests.
Yeah.
There's not a diocese around here with even half that number of priests today. But these were, like say, 110 native Irish, and there were some native Mississippi priests and a few from elsewhere. But the Irish were they were a tribe unto themselves.
Really?
They ruled the roost here.
Did they?
They were in all they had all the administrative jobs in the diocese, and some were good and some were, I guess, not so good.
Really?
And, but they were good guys for the most part.
And not so good. What did did the power get to their head or something like? Or?
No. I think that's part of the Irish character. If you kind of got ahead, your friends made sure that you were knocked down a peg or two.
Absolutely. Yeah. I couldn't. That's another thing I want to highlight.
Yeah.
That tendency back home compared to here, non-existent.
That was very true. Yeah. Now we noticed that, like among the native priests, they were, the idea of promotion, getting advanced, that was big stuff. To the Irish, it wasn't.
Or if it is, you don't let it be known.
That's right. Yeah.
You're discreet about it,
Well, discreet, and I think the Irish were smart enough to know that with, advancement, there were bigger responsibilities, and that could curb your lifestyle too.
Yeah. So you kind of let the hair down, like you fellas, like you were all good mates, and or what was that like?
Life was very good. Like I said, we had there were, I have no idea of numbers now or statistics, but there were. I was in my mid-20s, late 20s, early 30s, and there were at least 20 or 30 my own age group, and we all, for the most part, came from rural Ireland, some from the city of Dublin, and but we, we were Irish, and we acted like Irishmen, and we enjoyed each other's company, and we played sports, and
would you be drinking till all
there would be some, yes. There was some drinking, but it was always kind of, made sure it didn't get out of control.
Yeah.
And we kind of, we protected each other like that.
Okay.
Just social drinking, like.
Yeah. Were you surprised when you came here to Mississippi? Because I certainly was, but were you surprised about the number of Catholics that live around here? Or did you, because it's very much part of the culture in this part of the state.
Well,
in New Orleans, you have a lot of Catholics there. Mobile, Alabama, to the east as well.
Right.
There's a lot down here, and then you have black Catholics as well, which I always assumed any black Christians here pretty much were very rarely Catholics, or they were something else basically. But here they are.
Well, it has to do with the historical makeup of the area.
Yeah.
This is the Mississippi Gulf Coast, the northern Gulf Coast, the northern Gulf of Mexico, and you have, the French to the west, New Orleans, and on the east you had the Spanish coming up from Florida.
Okay.
And they're two very strong Catholic countries, and they actually mingled and met here in Pascagoula at one time. There was a consulate, a Spanish consulate here. But that's strictly along the Mississippi Gulf Coast.
Yeah.
Now you go 20 or 30 miles north of here, and you've left the Gulf Coast, you're into
the boonies.
English territory.
Okay.
And it's not Catholic. Okay. But the Gulf, like New Orleans is Catholic, Florida is Catholic, Pensacola, and the immediate Alabama, Mississippi Gulf Coast, these are the Catholic areas.
Yeah.
So there are quite a number of Catholics, and are they more influential than non-Catholics? Sometimes I think they are.
What do you mean influential?
In the sense that they're the professional people here, the lawyers, doctors, and I kind of think they are.
Really?
Yeah, they're.
And is that the discipline of or why is that?
I kind of would have to say it's probably due to good schools operated by the Catholic Church over the years.
Yeah.
Giving opportunities to young people.
And it carries on.
Carried on.
Over and over. Can you tell me about, you mentioned 10, 15, 20 miles up the road, and how foreign that is for a European person, basically, and I'm specifically referring to the likes of the guns, the lawlessness. Maybe I'm not being exactly accurate here, but you can talk about that. Like, people basically don't have a lot of time for intervention from authorities. Is that fair to say?
It would be more
in rural Mississippi specifically.
Yeah,
or no?
It's kind of rural Mississippi, rural Alabama, Georgia. They're all the same. Like it's the old America, the old, you know, cowboy and western mentality, you know, and not very well organized. The organization is in the cities along the Gulf Coast here, and like cities kind of took care of their own problems among themselves, and yes, there would have been some certain lawlessness up there.
And there's a certain amount of sense to that because they are out in the middle of bloody nowhere. You know?
Yeah, sure.
There's no help coming. You know,
absolutely.
if something goes wrong.
Yeah.
Like if you're broken into, for example, like.
Yeah. That's right. I lived in a little.
Is one policeman going to come and take on? You know.
Yeah. And he would have no, you know, police training. He'd be just deputized to be the lawman in the area.
And I was struck when you told me that these places are still in that they still operate like that.
There are places, yes, you would have that still.
Do you mind me asking you for names of certain towns?
Well, I lived in a place called Bassfield.
Okay.
It was in about as rural an area of Mississippi as you could get.
Okay.
It was in Jefferson Davis County, and just a small little community, maybe 500 or 600 people, and you know they would have incorporated as a city.
Okay.
But they wouldn't have the money to buy or to purchase or to pay for, you know, a professional police force, so they just deputize some guy, a layman that was, and you had laymen all over the place because of their involvement in the military.
Yeah. You
know, they could shoot a gun and they could, and they were decent fellas and so on, but they'd be the constables in the area, and there are lots of communities like that, and
I really want to see some of these places. Yeah. Maybe you can show me.
Well, of course, they're all dying out too.
Are they?
Now the you know, cities are getting more sophisticated, and they're taxing their people and hiring professional policemen. And
I want to ask you a little bit about the politics here, and there's a kind of we're in an interesting time. I just happened to hear, I think you mentioned you said to me earlier that there's a big election coming up
Tuesday,
and I asked you, is this a local thing? And you said no, it's the governor.
Yes.
So what's going on there? We're in Mississippi. It's obviously traditionally quite a conservative state, and wouldn't have much time for the other side, I suppose. But this time there might be a bit of a change.
Well, there's a very strong candidate running for governor on the Democratic side. He's been the Secretary of State. He's well known. He's had a good reputation, good record, and he's coming on very strong. And he obviously is getting tremendous backing from the Democratic Party.
Yeah.
He has a chance, I think, of beating the Republican candidate.
Which would be a big thing.
It would be, because about 25, 30 years ago, there was a big shift in politics here, and all of the Deep South was Democratic. And then the Democratic Party went liberal. And the politicians kind of switched to the Republican Party all over the place. They might be elected as the Democratic candidate from an area, and they wouldn't be in office for 6 months, and they decide to change parties.
Really?
Yeah, that happened widespread.
It's bizarre.
Kind of bizarre, yes. And anyway, the whole state of Mississippi went from being very Democratic to very Republican.
But it was the same people, basically, in charge.
The same people.
The new Republicans were the old Democrats.
Yeah, and then like the national politics went a bit goofy too.
Really?
Yeah, like today you hear a lot of criticism of the Democratic Party in Washington. They're pushing all the liberal agendas, and they wouldn't be popular among the rural Mississippians at all.
Not here, no. And I'm struck by you. You seem like a pretty reasonable. Forgetting, I don't use these words because they're so toxic and charged, but you to me seem like a liberal kind of person in that you're not concerned with the ceremony and the uniform and the incense. You want to just get the job done. You'll give communion to whoever. You'll let people into your church if they need a church to go to. You know, you're not obsessed with. To my understanding is you're not obsessed with borders and boundaries and rules. Do you know what I mean?
Yes, I do.
But with the politics, you wouldn't necessarily. It's gone a bit extreme in that way. Or are you just talking for you, or are you talking about the politics are gone too far for the people of Mississippi, but not for Father Mike? Does that make any sense?
Well, I find some of the liberal politics coming out of Washington, proposed by the Democratic Party, are a bit too extreme.
Yeah.
They're getting that way.
Yeah.
Now, rightly or wrongly, I don't know. But some of the things are kind of crazy.
And they're both going in opposite directions. That's the funny thing, you know.
Yeah,
the
you know,
Republicans are going.
like when you get into issues like gay marriage and things like that, they're you know, things like that would be unheard of in Mississippi.
Yes.
And would be anathema, would be completely rejected. And you know, is that the way the world is going? And I know it is. That's the way the world is going. But I'm inclined to pull back from that.
Really.
Yeah.
And specifically about the way the world is going and the church. Then the church has its own role, and where do you lie, or where do you sit in for example, there's like the you could say the old school, the more dogmatic style, and then there's the maybe after Vatican II things changed.
Yeah.
And some people try to cling on to the old way in the church.
Yeah.
And some people are trying to modernize things. So where do you sit with that?
I'd be with the modern. A good example kind of came out here just last week. The Pope Francis was he was someplace, and he was quoted. It was an incident that happened up in the Carolinas.
Yeah.
Joe Biden was in church just a couple of weeks ago, and he was refused communion by the pastor.
Right.
And I've been asked, like, would you do that? I said, absolutely not. I would never refuse anyone communion.
Yeah.
But there's a small little group of priests that you know, will refuse.
Wow.
And
because what? Because of his abortion or gay marriage? Or what is it?
Abortion, I think, is the big subject.
Yeah.
But that's a cover for other liberal ways, I think. Then I kind of try to listen to what is Pope Francis saying, and I think Pope Francis is saying, you know, who are we to judge? You know, is that what Jesus Christ would have done? And I'd be with Pope Francis.
Yeah.
I'm not going to refuse anyone. I'm not going to judge anyone.
Yeah. So while you don't agree with a certain trend, you're not going to say, get out of my church.
Oh, no.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You won't be militant, let's say.
No.
About it.
No. There's room for everyone.
Yeah. In your church.
In my church, yes.
In the Church of Father Mike.